Perhaps it surprises some of you that we would begin, maybe it doesn't surprise you at all, with an account of an exorcism. I think postmodern people were actually somewhat embarrassed by how much of Jesus' ministry is driving out devils. And we all know they don't exist, and we're sort of embarrassed by the thought. And so why do we have to read these silly, useless accounts? And the fact that they are so common in the Gospels perhaps should give us room for pause to wonder what it is that these are really referring to. And I'm sure you're already making the connections, because I am convinced that the driving out of the devil was an early, very straightforward metaphor and symbol and reality for the dealing with what we now call addiction. There are 7 clear stories, repeated, of course, between the Gospels, of Jesus driving out devils. There's first of all, a devil in, of all places, the sacred space of the synagogue. It appears to be the addiction to religion itself. There's 2 devils that keep people blind and mute. There's one that keeps a woman bent over. What can you do with that? There's a boy who's self-destructive. How many don't we know? There's a girl with a sense of unworthiness, uncleanness, as it's put. And one that we just read about, who is either self-chained or chained by the village in the local cemetery. There's many further references in the 4 Gospels to driving out devils, which again we're sort of embarrassed at because we know we don't do that anymore in proper Christian churches. But we have to ask, and we're going to ask these days, what is this referring to, and why don't we do it anymore? Or has it simply taken on, as I think it has, a new form? I am convinced exorcism and the speaking of devils was a primitive but absolutely truthful way of referring to what we now call addiction. In each case, notice, the devil possesses the person. It's not something they seem to have chosen or have much freedom about. It happens to them. And yet it took us centuries to understand that addiction is a disease. Much of history, even after these Gospels, still tended to think of addicted people as somehow morally culpable, morally unworthy, inferior human beings. And here already, by the naming of it as something that possessed you, we're trying to separate from this notion of moral culpability. It's something done to you more than something you do, although then, of course, you do it too. It is a force larger than the person, which they personify as a devil or Satan. They are, in some sense, in every case, those possessed by a demon are in some case, some way, paralyzed. Or, to use the 12-step language, powerless to do anything about it. They are trapped. And in several cases, we even have the possessed person themselves does not seek the healing, but it's their mother or their father or a member of the family. What some would call today the codependent or the Al-Anon member, the one who recognizes the tremendous wound that the family carries, even though the wounded one himself or herself does not yet recognize what they are dealing with. And somehow, in the freeing of the person who makes the request, the healing of what we would call the codependent person, interestingly enough, in these accounts, the person himself or herself is also healed. So, these stories that the modern, postmodern mind has been so ready to dismiss as primitive or medieval was basically just because we don't know how to read sacred story. We don't know how to read sacred mythology. And the scientific mind emerged and said this was all ridiculous. And yet I think we're going to see the metaphors are all correct. As more and more scientists are even discovering, the intuitions of religion are usually right on. The formulations of those intuitions are very often overly literal. They become cliches, they become dogmas and doctrines that people mouth quickly without any understanding of the underpinnings or what they really mean. And we end up with dead religion, where simply people believe phraseologies and lose the power, which is exactly what I think it was 2 Timothy prophesied, that religion would keep up all the forms, but the inner power would be lost. One reason I wanted to again talk about this theme is because I believe the 12-step program, more than almost any other programmatic attempt at spiritual renewal, has rediscovered power, actual transformative power. I gave a conference last year called From Information to Transformation, where we were trying to recognize that much of religion has become the transferring of information, as if information can save you. Just have correct information. Just have information that Rome approves of, and this is going to transform you. All right? I don't think so. There's little evidence that that's true, and Paul takes much of his letter to the Romans to make that very clear. And yet we go right back into it, that we can do it by intelligence or willpower. What the 12-step programs have rediscovered, which I think is authentic gospel, is that it has little to do with intelligence. Surprise to Western educated people. And it has little to do with willpower. Surprise to people who have been trained in exercising willpower as we have.